Welcome to Grace Pilled, a podcast about the spiritual process and the mysterious forces shaping your life. My name is Hanna, and since 2015, I have been a practitioner in a classical Shakta tantric tradition, which informs literally every aspect of my life, including the things that I like to talk about. I work with people to recognize the deeply spiritual patterns that are shaping their life so that they can start moving with those patterns instead of against them. This show is that whole conversation out loud again and again and again. You can work with me through my website, hannawilliams.com, or join my Patreon for deeper teachings and ongoing Q&A sessions, also a community Discord server. I also have a 100% free human design resource on my website if you want to start your human design experiment. But for now, let's get into the episode. Hey, you guys. We're back for another solo cast. We're revisiting one of my Patreon greatest hits today. And the reason why is because the first time that I recorded it, I had my headphones with like the horrible microphone attached to Bluetooth on my phone. And I was recording it when I was driving, and like that's when my brain is the most on. And I just thought it was good enough to post the audio with the shitty audio, even after I compressed it to sound better. It still sounded really bad, but I posted it on Patreon and I got a lot of positive feedback about it. And I thought to myself, okay, this is good enough. I'm going to put this on my to-do list to re-record this down the line with better audio. And I don't know, 9 months later, here I am. So this talk is basically, how can I be happy when the world is shit? And I want to do like a little bit of a preamble before we get into it. When we get into like the topic of happiness, it's like a pretty loaded concept. Like, I can't think of a more loaded concept than what people think happiness is. And I just want to like say in the beginning here that there are absolutely certain situations that are more favorable for allowing the experience of happiness to reveal itself in your life. Like, for instance, like drinking a strawberry daiquiri on the beach. I mean, I've had a bad time in paradise, so you could be in the most perfect place imaginable and be having a bad time. You know, you get ghosted in Bali and you're going to be having a bad time. But of course, there's also certain situations that are less favorable for happiness, you know, like a cancer diagnosis. But what I want you to understand is that even in the darkest situations you can conceive of, the basic things that I'm covering in this episode still stand. The yogis who developed these philosophies that I'm speaking from were not drinking daiquiris on the beach. So, you know, I mean, even if you think of the history of karma, like you literally go back into the history of the philosophy of karma, that whole philosophy arose during a period of time of pestilence in the Indian subcontinent. So it's not like it was a good time, you know? Some of the strongest philosophies that have ever happened in human history arose in serious adversity. And so it may sound kind of counterintuitive, but we're actually living through better conditions right now, culturally and globally, than what was happening 1,000 years ago. Like, even though it really feels like the world's going to hell in a handbasket, things are actually better now across the board for the majority of humans than what was happening 1,000 years ago, especially if you're listening to this from a country that has decent medicine. We're not going to talk about insurance, decent medicine, running water, and food on the shelves in the grocery store for now. So the conditions are very different. I also want to say that if I had not met my own teachers, my Guruji and his wife Anandamai, I would never believe a word of what I'm about to say. I would never believe the truth that happiness and contentment is not 100% dependent on external circumstance. I have seen my guru go through multiple surgeries, intense diagnoses, Parkinson's being the most recent, and while going through all of that, appear to be completely unaffected. I've known this man for 11 years, and it's only been in the last 2 years that I have seen what looks like struggle simply due to his age. He's 85. And so through grace and spiritual focus, I know that he found the place within himself that's unaffected by the external circumstance, and he rests his awareness there as he lives his life. I know that this is possible because I have seen it with my own eyes and I have felt it with my own senses, okay? And Anandamai too, his wife. When I first came to the ashram, she struggled with completely debilitating migraines for 2 weeks out of the month. Completely debilitating in a dark room for 2 weeks out of the month, every month, when I first met her. But when she would not be in the dark room, out in the world, interacting with us, she was always just such an unbelievable ray of sunshine and upliftment, even when she was suffering. Even when she had suffered, she's not shaking her fist at the sky about her suffering. And so both of these people that I know personally and deeply, these are like people who are family to me, both of them have been a literal godsend to me, especially living with my own chronic health issues, which were much worse when I first met them 11 years ago. So I say this to say that people show us what's possible in consciousness. People show us what's possible in consciousness. You can read about it all day. You can even hear me talk about it. But being in aura with people shows us what's possible in consciousness. And this is why you need to live as an example of what's possible to the best of your ability. And when you handle a hardship with grace and with wisdom, you show the people in your life what's possible. People are what make a concept a reality. So you have to become the reality, okay? So, let's get into the thing I actually want to say. Okay, so let's call this a pep talk. This is for if you're feeling a little discombobulated because of the reality that we're living in, or very far from the capital T truth that you know is real. This is a listen when you're struggling, okay? Something I hear all the time is, how can I be happy when there's so much suffering in the world? How can I be happy when the world is going to hell in a handbasket? How can I be happy when there's so much injustice and when so many people are unhappy? And my honest response to that is that my state of being, happiness is a state of being, my state of being is not 100% dependent on external circumstances. I'll say that again. My state of being is not 100% dependent on external circumstances. The question, how can I be happy when there's suffering in the world, contains an underlying belief that happiness is 100% correlated to circumstance. When life goes the way that I want it to go, then I get to be happy. This is, in many ways, the human condition. If you're moving through reality in a body, in the meat suit, understanding the world through the 5 senses, and no one has ever told you any sort of a spiritual secret, of course, you're going to assume that things outside of you make you happy. But they don't. So let me paint you a picture. My guru often uses the example of pie to talk about this. If pie itself, or cake, whatever your preference is, if pie itself contained joy, then the more pie that you ate, the happier you would become, right? Like if an ingredient latent within the pie was joy, the more pie that you ate, the happier it would become. But you already know from experience, being alive on this earth for as long as you've been alive, that this isn't true, you know? You can only put so many heaps of pumpkin pie or pecan pie on your plate before you feel worse, not better, actually. So the more pie that you eat, the worse you feel. So if that's true, that means that the pie isn't making you happy. The pie puts your mind into a disposition that allows the self-existent joy that's already within you to flash forward in your mind and heart temporarily. So the bliss of the inner self is the thing that's actually always there. And the pie reveals the bliss of the inner self. It's a self-existent experience. So your mind can either open like a door and reveal it, or it can slam the door shut depending on the posture of your mind or the posture of your heart. Over the course of more than a decade of spiritual practice, I've gotten much better at opening or closing this door within my mind that reveals my self-existent feeling of what we can call happiness. And I've been putting in the hours. And if I had to put a number on it with how dependent on external circumstance I am, given over a decade of realizing that happiness is my own treasure, I would say that maybe 15% of my state is still dependent on external circumstances, right? Because circumstances can absolutely rattle me. I'll get triggered. I have bad days if I'm on like day 4 of my period. Like I don't even try to have a good time, you know? I'm not claiming to be some sort of perfectly enlightened person, but you know, if 15% of my state is dependent on external circumstances, what about the other 85%? I know that my state of being is my responsibility. And that other 85% is me knowing as an adult who's trying to mature into a real elder who can set an example for the whole reality, is that I am responsible for the way that I look at the world. That's my work. It doesn't matter what's happening out there. That's my work. I had a call with somebody recently who asked me how I was doing. And I said, I'm in such a good mood. And this person said, wow, what happened? And I said, nothing. Literally nothing happened. I just decided to be in a good mood. Haters don't want to hear this, but you can actually literally just decide to be in a good mood. Now, when I share that sort of a thing, I can already hear objections. You know, I'm always thinking about objections because I've got the mind of a lawyer. Somebody might hear that and they say, well, I can't just decide to be happy because I'm not happy. And sure, there is a huge difference between taking responsibility for your state and spiritually bypassing your emotions. There's a difference between sitting with your emotions, mining them for their meaning, and allowing them to move through you, or just sitting in a perpetual swamp of misery and calling that emotional processing. Those are two different things. But sometimes we don't know how to shift our state and actually sit with the emotions and process them rather than just stew in a uncomfortably uncomfortable swamp of misery, because we don't know how to actually make the shift because we don't even understand the inner world. And so sometimes you can't shift your state because there's a baby crying in the other room. Emotions that need to be sat with are like babies that are crying in the other room. It's what prevents you from presence. Whenever I hear a baby like crying at like a friend's house or something, or like at a restaurant, airport, whatever, I can barely focus on anything else, right? And maybe this is the feminine drive to find the baby and make sure that it's okay. But I think this is a very useful metaphor, emotionally and spiritually. A lot of people can't be present to their deeper reality, their emotional life, or even the present moment because they have a crying baby in the other room. And for most people, especially if you're not very emotionally literate, I would say that most people have probably 15 or 20 babies crying in the other room. It's the fucking nursery at the hospital. And those babies that are crying in the other room are feelings that you've stuffed down. They are resentments, bitterness, grief, an unresolved conflict that you certainly have with somebody, and maybe even an unresolved conflict with somebody who's dead. Maybe it's an unresolved conflict that you have with yourself. There's all kinds of shit that are these babies screaming and wailing in the other room. And if you have too many crying babies, even one is too many, but if you have too many crying babies, you literally can't just decide to be happy. This is what I'm saying. Like I can decide to be happy because I don't have a bunch of fucking crying babies in the other room. And so if you feel like I can't just decide to be happy, even though the world is going to shit, your responsibility in that moment, whenever you can, when you get home from work, when you have a moment after you put your own baby to bed, is to tend to your own crying babies. This is where I think people can get kind of confused. Being miserable is not necessarily the same thing as being with your emotions. Being sad is one thing, but actually sitting with sadness and listening to it and letting it tell you what's actually up with you and allowing it to move and be felt is a completely different experience. If you can develop the capacity to internally navigate to the real thing that's happening for you emotionally and just sit down on the sidewalk next to it and pat it on the back, you're setting yourself up for success to become less dependent on external circumstances for your happiness. And if that's something that you want, which I highly recommend because the world is actually not getting any easier, you have two jobs. You have to tend to the crying babies, and you have to take responsibility for your inner world. You have to work through what you've been shoving down. You have to. It is your imperative. You have to do it. And then, when there isn't actually a baby in the crying in the other room, you have to become willing to say, I can change the way that I'm looking at this situation. I can change my state. You have to believe that you are the captain of your own ship. All of this brings me back to the question, how can I be happy when there's so much suffering in the world? I think sometimes we carry this belief that the presence of evil somehow cancels out the presence of good. Or we believe that being perpetually sad, guilty, or depressed because terrible things are happening is somehow helping. It's not. I know some of you listeners believe this. If I feel really guilty and sad about the world, that's helping. It's not. And if you struggle with that, I want you to say it out loud. When I remain miserable and disempowered, I'm helping people who are suffering. Say it. How does that help? Is it going to help for you to be that? There is literally nothing virtuous about refusing to live and thrive just because other people are suffering. There's literally nothing fucking this is a CIA psyop, guys. There is nothing virtuous about weighing down the web of consciousness that we actually are all intimately connected to just because you feel guilty that you have access to joy when other people don't. Literally nobody gets helped by you refusing to thrive. It's not helping. And a more helpful path, actually, imagine if everyone on earth did this. A more helpful path is to do the inner work necessary to become a ray of light and to enjoy your life and do meaningful work that is materially uplifting the realm, help people, take responsibility for your state, and urgently, one of the most helpful things you can do for your immediate community and your immediate relationships is to become less easily knocked over by the world. Not because you don't care about the world, but because you do. What if you became stronger in the face of the crumbling reality because you care about the crumbling reality? My guru is very interested in the work of Rupert Sheldrake, who's a fringe evolutionary biologist, and his core hypothesis is this idea of morphic resonance. And the basic idea is that when one member of a species of animals learns something, that possibility becomes more available within the larger field that the species is playing within. So, for instance, he ran these experiments where there were mice in different places all over the world learning a new maze. And as soon as one mouse figured out the maze, almost like clockwork, all of the other mice in all the other locations figured out the maze at the same time. So I use that as an example to say that if one person learns how to still be present to the miracle of existence, to still enjoy life and love God, do meaningful work, and lift the web of life despite the horrors, that person makes it easier for other people to imagine doing the same thing. What did I say in the beginning? People make consciousness possible. People are what show you what is possible in consciousness. You have to be the person that sparks a new idea in the big imagination of this reality. And what you do with your life on every level matters. What you do with your life on every single level matters. It's not just what you physically do. It's not your job title. It's not how many hours you put in at your community organizing group. It's every level. What are you doing in your heart? What are you doing in your mind? You're not helping anyone by deciding, I guess I'll never get to live the life that I want because I was born on the wrong timeline. That is a rotten attitude. And when you help yourself, and when you do the work, and when you see God in everything, when you tend to all of your fucking crying babies and then decide to be happy just because you can, just because that's an option, you're actually doing a lot more work than you realize. You're actually helping all of us. And I thank you for that. If you take on the great work of trying to do that, thank you. Thank you. So my prayer for you is this, oh listener, may you find the fire within you to ignite the spirit of taking total responsibility for your experience of your own damn life. Please, for the love of God. May you recognize that none of the great sages throughout history have ever said that happiness is dependent on external circumstance. No one has ever said that. There is not going to be some breakthrough in philosophy where we suddenly realize, oh, actually happiness was dependent on external circumstance the whole time. That's not happening. Give it a shot. Try it. What have I said? My guru will tell me something. He'll say that wealth is a spiritual obstacle. He'll say that relationships are a spiritual obstacle. I don't just take that at face value. I try it out for myself. I'll get on Tinder and go on 15 dates and see, is it really a distraction? I have found that most things that he says are absolutely true, but I had to find that out for myself. And so if you don't like what I'm saying, that happiness is not dependent on external circumstances, if you say, actually, I'm going to prove to you that happiness is dependent on external circumstances, go for it and come back with your report. Give it 5 years. You have 5 years to come back and prove to me that I'm wrong. And listener, may you realize that happiness and your inner state are an inside job. And may you slowly but surely, through dedication and the love of the reality, get to the point where you're only 15% affected by external circumstances. Oh, poor is the pupil that does not outshine the master. Can you get to 10% for me, baby? What if you got to 10%? This is extremely important work, guys, because none of this is getting better. You know it. And even if we lived in a queer, democratic socialist, polycule utopia, you're still going to get old and you're still going to die. We do all of this spiritual work. We do the heavy lifting as soon as possible because we're going to die. And when the body fades away, when you're lying in the hospital, if your state of being is entirely dependent on external circumstance, on the state of the body, on the smell of the hospital room, you're fucked. You have to find the thing inside of you that holds up no matter what. You have to find that ray of light inside of you that you can internally navigate to. And rest your awareness there and realize that's the only real thing that holds up no matter what. But you have to do the work now. You have to. It's a mental muscle, baby. You got to put your reps in. And you can start today. Let's do a little meditation. You're breathing. So just take a moment to remember the fact that you're breathing, this thing that you've done since the moment you came into the reality out of your mother's womb. Just take a deeper inhale, longer exhale. Deeper inhale, longer exhale. You can do this with your eyes open or closed. Find a pace of breathing that's deeper than normal, but not really forcing anything. Just take a couple of breaths there. And what I want you to do is when you get to the end of your exhale, pause for just a beat. Inhale normally. Exhale normally. Pause for a beat. Inhale normally. Exhale normally. Pause for a beat. And when you get back to that pause at the bottom of the breath, like you've landed at the bottom of a pool, your toe has touched the bottom of the pool. Notice the quality of that space. There's something there. It's vibrant. It's full of chitti, shakti, the vibrancy of consciousness. Inhale normally. Exhale normally. The sensations you feel, that vibrancy in the space, that is the power of consciousness. It's the same power that powers the sun, the same power that keeps your heart beating. That's the power of God. That is the inner self making itself known to you, the bliss of existence, the bliss of the fact that you even get to have an experience at all. I urge you to get to know that space, to get to know that consciousness, to build a relationship with it. It is what will hold your hand as you take your last breath. Okay, that's it. Love you guys.